Thank you everyone for joining this webinar today, which will be around an hour long, and there'll be around 20 minutes for a live Q&A, so please do send through your questions. We'll be discussing the many issues 2020 has thrown at all of us, but more importantly, how SMEs have overcome those issues by adapting and embracing new technologies. And thank you very much to my panel that have joined me today from Complete I.T, Datto, Perennial and Heat Recruitment. And apologies from Stuart from Sharp, who's no longer able to make the webinar due to the changes that have come in this week with the lockdown. So please do keep the questions coming throughout using the Q&A button. And if the questions are for anyone specific throughout the webinar, just mention the name. I'm Jessica Simonson, Marketing Director at Complete I.T, and I'll be facilitating the discussion. So I will hand over to Colin to start the introductions.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Colin Blumenthal, and I'm the co-founder and managing director of Complete I.T.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tim Colleen. I'm the operations director of Complete I.T, and I hope you're all keeping well and safe.
Hi everyone, my name's Simon Jeffries and I work as the Head of Technology at Complete I.T.
Hello everybody, I'm Greg Jones from Datto, Business Development Director.
Hi everyone, I'm Amy Routley, Operations Manager for Perennial, which is the UK's only charity dedicated to helping everyone who works in horticulture and their families when times get tough, and we've done so for over 180 years.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve Preston from Heat Recruitment, specialise in financial services, IT, insurance, legal and engineering recruitment.
Thank you. So starting with you, Colin, how has Complete IT managed during the past year with teams needing to work remotely, but still, and most importantly, supporting our clients?
Yeah, thank you, Jess. I think we were in a fortunate situation when the first lockdown happened, in so much as we were already using Microsoft's cloud technologies based on Microsoft 365, which gave us a platform to readily be in a position where we could work from home. In addition, from a telephony point of view, not just a data and connectivity point of view, our cloud telephony solution also enabled us to be readily able to work from home rather than all being in our offices. In addition, we already had plans in place in what to do if we all had to work from home. Now, that wasn't because we were clever and knew we were going to get a pandemic. That was because we were prepared for snow days. And of course, we have had snow days in the past where we can't get to our offices and we have to be in a position to be able to work from home. Now, what happened in March was obviously different, but we had to readily and quickly be able to work from home. Unfortunately, because of what I just mentioned earlier, we were in a position where we could quickly work from home. And the help desks, who are the front line of our business, were absolutely deluged, as I'm sure everybody can imagine, with calls from all of our clients who weren't in such a position to be able to easily work from home. So it was very, very fortunate, or good planning, that we were able to do that quickly. And we were delighted that we could so quickly help our clients rearrange and reconfigure their IT so they were able to work from home. Now, after the initial deluge of calls, things obviously did settle down, and for us as a business, we actually have been working well away from the office and in our home environments. But one thing we've spent time and focus on is keeping our culture alive. As I'm sure everybody can appreciate, when you're away from the office, you're not in touch with your colleagues, you feel a bit more away from the mothership and the entity. And it's been really important for us to spend time on ensuring that everybody still feels part of the business. Now, obviously, technology has played a huge part in that. And video conferencing, and for us, obviously, Microsoft Teams, part of Microsoft 365, has been an important part of that. So we've done lots of activities, whether that's work focused ones in terms of daily drop-ins, communications, and quizzes to make everybody still feel part of the business and not just feel they're working in isolation at home. And I think, you know, I cannot emphasize the importance of the fact that we have done that and are continuing to do this in lockdown 2.0, as people seem to be calling it. So yeah, Jess, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of the things we really put a lot of emphasis on at the beginning of lockdown. The culture was something we were really worried about, with the team not being together. So yeah, I think it's a really important piece that everyone was obviously struggling to set up all the technology and everything to work remotely, but that was a huge part of what we did, with putting together team calls and in making sure the whole team were able to talk to people on a daily basis rather than just the individual people. There might be people that are usually on the road that it's very different for them being at home or working away from the teams. So,
and I think the other thing is, you know, and everybody complains about their organisation and their communications. In these instances, you cannot over communicate. Now I know there are different ways of communicating, but email can be an effective one in just giving people regular updates on what's happening. And when you're working from home, you are a bit more isolated. You don't pick up the sort of the office feel and the office gossip, for want of a better word, of what's happening with the business. So regular communication and increased communication has been important for us.
yeah. So Amy, over to you. With the third sector, it's obviously been hit really hard this year. Would you say there was anything that Perennial have done differently this year that's helped your organisation continue to work?
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, I mean, it's been challenging for us. And I suppose Perennial this year really had to learn how to be together while they're apart. So although our services team are used to working remotely and all of the nuances that go along with that, the rest of us based in the Leatherhead office have been truly spoiled with having all technology and personal connections with colleagues at our fingertips during working hours. So at the beginning of the year, we undertook a project with CIT to upgrade our servers and increase security. But while we were doing that, we also set up remote desktop services, and it meant that our staff could work from anywhere, so as smoothly from home as they'd been working in the office. And it also meant that we didn't have to provide all staff with laptops in order for them to work at home, and that cost saving made a huge difference for us at a time when the country is so financially unsure, particularly in the not-for-profit sector. Connection directly into our servers made things so much more efficient for us, and we also implemented two-factor authentication, which made us much more confident working outside of the office environment in terms of security. A big win for us, I think, was getting everybody working on Microsoft Teams. We started in our marketing department and they fully embraced all of the team services, and this was then rolled out to the rest of the charity. And to be honest, if it hadn't, I don't know what we would have done. Having to begin again in a bit of a rush when the lockdown came in. So since lockdown, we've all become Teams experts. It's given us in some ways more of a connection that we had when we saw each other every day and took that relationship for granted. So all in all, I think the systems and working styles we've implemented means that we haven't noticed a difference in our ability to undertake our job roles, no matter where we are. And this will probably continue into the future for us because it's proven that we can work efficiently anywhere thanks to a good IT setup.
Yeah, I think I feel exactly the same with Teams. When we've had new starters, which we've been lucky enough to have over lockdown in London or Peterborough, I've actually given them a call on the day and seen them face to face, where in real life I might not have seen them for a month or so, or when the next induction is. So that's been really nice.
Yeah, I think we take that ability for granted because we see each other every day. We just think, oh, that's fine, we'll bump into them into the office at some point, but having that immediate connection's made a real difference.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And Steve, being in recruitment, you must have had to really analyse the way your business worked and perhaps look at new ways of doing things. Did you have contingency plans in place before COVID hit? And if so, what do they look like? Or if not, do you have them in place now?
Yeah, I mean, we've always had contingency plans in place. I think what we've done is strengthen them. I mean, you revisit them and see, you know, have they worked as well as you want them to work? I suppose over time, we've always looked at our software systems anyway, because obviously in recruitment, it's, you know, we're quite heavy on a CRM system as it is, and that's all supported obviously by yourselves in the cloud. So we were very cloud-based anyway prior to this, and equally using soft phones as well. So the telephony also linked into the PCs and laptops. I think the one thing we had to do was just go out and buy a sort of a bulk load of laptops, which you guys then pretty much set up in about 2 days so that we could make sure that everyone had a laptop within the business. The contingency side of things has always been there with, we've entered quite a few awards over the years and pitched for different tenders. And you always find that question comes up within, you know, the form or the format that you're working to. So it always makes it something that you've got to assess anyway, because your clients want to know that you've got a backup, you've got a contingency, especially if they're going to place the bulk of their recruitment with you. They want to know that you're going to be able to function in various situations. And equally, we had probably about 3 years ago, we had a small hack on our system. So that was something that really did bring it home to us. So, you know, luckily we had Marcus on it, who was, you know, previously worked in IT security. So he was able to recognize it straight away. And then we strengthened those areas as well. And of late, obviously took on, got the accreditation for Cyber Essentials, which gives, I suppose, that peace of mind to our clients. So I think overall, I mean, there's always things that you look back and think, could we have, you know, tweaked that? But I think with lockdown 1, all those little niggles of getting kit to people was ironed out, so that as we come into lockdown 2 or 2.0, as Colin was saying, it's actually been quite smooth, really, because people have already been working from home. We've got people working in bubbles, so we've got sort of a red team and a blue team, so neither shall meet, so to speak. But equally, we're trying to keep that culture over, you know, different sort of, there'll be a Friday catch up today, and then teams break down into their own Friday beer, virtual sort of beers, virtual drinking from home, really, isn't it? It's, so they'll have those aspects taking place. So I think from what we had, it was strong enough. And I think what we've done now is just enhance it a bit more and accept that, you know, this sort of hybrid model is going to continue.
Yeah, can I just add, and Steve and Amy have covered some really important things there. Definitely we saw massive rush, as everybody can imagine, for the purchase of laptops, and there was a notebooks, and there was a big shortages in March, and we've seen it happen again in the last few weeks. I think, you know, if budgets do allow, and absolutely take on board what Amy is saying with financial pressures, but the ability to give your team laptops just means that problem's then gone away if we should all have to work from home. And obviously, you know, a lot of organisations are looking at their office space strategy, and whether with flexible working, you know, whether they need as much office space, and hence their team are probably going to be more likely to spend more time away from the office at home, and a notebook just enables them to carry out their work more effectively. Terminal services or remote desktop is a solution, absolutely, but it's probably not as agile and flexible as a notebook. So yeah. I
think that was one of the big decisions that we did make from this, because we previously had the PCs, you know, sort of all-in-one PCs. Great, and they did the job. They're really, really good at what they're doing. However, then as people progressed within the business, sort of became a senior consultant, they would then move to a laptop with a second screen, so they'd operate the dual screen. What we've done with this now is just gone, you know what, let's just roll that out to everyone, no matter whether they be a trainee or whether they be the most senior consultant, so that everyone's got the dual screen in office. Everything is the same base unit to connect into, so it's all the same laptops for everyone across the office, and that is working really well, with allowing people literally just to grab their smartphone, grab their laptop, throw it in a bag, and then they can literally work. Especially with the uncertainty of, you know, you don't know who's going to have to isolate at the moment. You don't know who's going to be locked down for 2 weeks. You know, we can't project that bit. We can project which teams we want to work together, but we can't project if someone's going to come into contact with someone or have a COVID scare that they're going to have to, you know, as I say, isolate for 14 days. We've got to be as flexible as we can with that. So the laptop cloud setup really works for us, because people can move, you know, very quickly to accommodate the work.
And I think when we're talking about, you know, embracing the new normal, that the configuration you've set up for your team is probably now the new normal. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, completely.
I think that's a really good point, Steve, that you raise. Throughout lockdown, what we've been seeing is organizations have been, in essence, fast-tracked along the technology journey. You know, within a few months, we've seen a rate of change which is in line with years, not months, really. And obviously the likes of Complete being able to get you operational and as effective as possible is absolutely paramount. I think SMEs out there have done an absolutely sterling job getting operational. We are in the security space and business continuity. And although we have, you know, a whole department and team to come up with a plan around disaster recovery and business protection, there was still elements, even as Colin alluded to before, of our plan that we just hadn't thought of. We hadn't thought of a global pandemic. You know, Colin alluded to that he engaged with his snow plan. There were certain areas within our plan that we engaged, and I think that's also paramount for SMEs to keep reviewing that and make sure it's in line with your technology going forward.
Completely. And as an industry, we've been trying to get, if you know, take the vast size of a sort of client bank that we have, and we've been trying to get, you know, whether it be HR departments or directors, whoever's carrying out the interviews, we've been trying to get people for probably the last 2-3 years to adopt sort of video conferencing to conduct interviews. Now, literally, as you say, those years have been sped up into months, if not weeks, where people have now gone, okay, we'll interview. So interviews are now primarily literally conducted over Zoom or Microsoft Teams or FaceTime off of you know, your Android or your iOS phone. So that shift for us as an industry is massive, because people can now, you know, they're sorting interviews straight away. They're not having to, you know, book them a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, but they're utilizing the technology that's available. And then, as you say, we've even been doing onboarding for people that has all been done remotely, because they're not going to an office. So, you know, they're literally, especially in the world of law, where they're sort of, you know, if they're dealing with conveyance or whatever, they can do that they can do that from home. They can access the files and they can crack on. So we're seeing a lot more where people are just actually understanding that that is the modern way of working now. And you'll probably, as you say, see your fellow colleagues face to face. Let's say, you know, it's going to be a lot more infrequent, in the sense of it'll be only a few times a month as opposed to on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, for me, it just makes that IT relationship all the more paramount in terms of aligning, you know, the technology with the business outcomes, really. And ultimately, you know, it's been horrendous, obviously, this health pandemic that we're amongst, but ultimately it will make businesses more streamlined, more profitable. And as you say, you think of the hours that have been saved there just around recruitment alone. You know.
Even things like, I mean, I used to have to attend a meeting up in London on a, you know, Tuesday morning. You get the early train out of Temple Meads at sort of 6 in the morning, 2 hours, 2.5 hours of traveling up there for a 1 hour meeting to then do 2.5 hours coming back. It is, whereas now the meeting still starts at 9 o'clock and everyone's on it, everyone's on time, but it's all done via Zoom or via Teams. You know, so that alone is, you know, for me personally, has saved me a vast amount of time, plus all the other people that attend the meeting. So I think, you know, across the country, that's going to be huge.
One thing I was just going to add, I think we still see a lot of organisations struggling with the use of technology away from the office. So things like finance applications and applications that you normally need to be in the office to run, actually there's no reason now that they can't move to cloud-based solutions. So we still hear a lot of people struggling with a VPN connection, or we hear people can't access files and folders when they're working from home because they're on the server in the office. Those types of challenges now with the advent of the cloud technology don't need to exist. So sort of my plea is anybody on the call that does have those challenges, that is struggling with accessing IT systems in a remote capacity, you know, talk to us, talk to your IT provider, because there are solutions now that mean that shouldn't be a challenge for you.
Yeah, I think hosting your own server from that as a business is probably extremely dated.
Yeah,
completely.
Yeah, it's now very rare. servers into client sites. Certainly, you know, we've talked a lot already about Microsoft 365 and Teams. You know, there are some really, really great technologies out there that actually are also more secure than that environment you used to have in that server room in the office. So the other challenge that I see that exists is that the security challenge of users is actually now slightly more challenging. We now have to consider every single endpoint on everyone's home internet connection, opposed to them being physically sat there and located in the office. And I know we're going to talk about that a bit further later, but certainly something to consider.
Yeah, definitely. With regards to security, it's obviously a major concern now. Without having your teams next to you, you can't turn to someone to ask if an email's from them. So, Simon, are there any new threats that have come to light in the last year, or any advice you'd give SMEs on how to protect against them?
Yeah, well, of course, there's always been threats, you know, cyber threats, and there always will be. And of course, with people moving to work from different locations, they've of course increased. But you know, and there's the uptake we've just been discussing around cloud platforms and SaaS products. There's obviously the cloud vulnerability aspect to it all, so that's kind of increased. You know, people might have moved to cloud platforms quite quickly in their lockdown, and may have not taken security into consideration as much as they would have done normally, just so that they can get people working effectively. So there's cloud vulnerability issues that we see, things like attackers gaining access through brute force, and you know, that's then obviously data leaks, etc. From that. There's been quite a large increase in targeted email attacks as well, spear phishing, and there's lots of social engineering when people fall victim to that. You know, with these spear phishing attacks, people might have before asked colleagues, you know, does this look right? But you know, working from home, they don't necessarily do that because there's no one there with them. And attackers are now able to use things like AI, which is a really nice technology to streamline processes, but use AI in a negative way and look at how people interact with each other and spot patterns of behaviour, so that once they're in a system, they can learn what people do, or a system can learn what people do, and it's a lot easier for them to then, you know, steal data, steal, you know, financial information, etc. And then, you know, looking at other areas, the Internet of Things, lots of things at home, but obviously businesses use a lot of smart devices as well now, and you can never guarantee, you know, because there's so many, the security posture of those, and simply plugging those into your infrastructure or even at home, you know, can open up potential issues to attackers. And it might be legitimate companies that have built these things, but you know, have they made their communication secure, or has have devices been created that are deliberately going to open up holes for people? And then, as we've talked about, working remotely, that in itself has been an issue in some cases, because people had to do it quickly. We had to all move home. Remote access solutions may not have been in place, so people have, you know, maybe using their home devices. We don't know the security posture of those. We don't know if we've secured remote access correctly, and whether people are actually copying data to personal devices, you know, quite legitimately to work, but you know, we're opening up lots of holes there. So there's quite a bit that can be going on, and of course there's lots we can do about it. You know, there should be a big focus in businesses for educating your users on security awareness and the importance of data protection, so that they can help them identify, you know, suspect email, or you know, when they shouldn't really be releasing data, and to make sure that they're looking at data and keeping data where it should be. You know, companies should evaluate their security of their files and their data. You know, there's lots of businesses out there that have full access to everything, and these days we can't do that, especially if it's in a cloud platform and it's compromised. Yeah. You potentially lose lots and lots of data. So you should evaluate security, secure it down to those who need it. You should encrypt sensitive files. And of course, a big thing, especially with cloud infrastructure, MFA. Lots and lots of people don't use it, but it's a simple process to implement in order to stop that brute force access into, you know, pretty much any cloud infrastructure and even traditional on-prem infrastructures. Yeah. And then, you know, if unfortunately you do fall victim to attack, or and your systems are encrypted, there might be crypto locker style infection, your data stolen, you want to ensure you've got a robust backup and recovery system that's been tested, meets your recovery time objectives. You can ensure that your infrastructure is back up as soon as possible, as opposed to then having to try and pick apart what's been broken and never being actually sure if you've removed all of the infection. So there's lots we can do. And then, of course, finally, we've touched on endpoints. Tim touched on it. Invest in cybersecurity tools to help protect your endpoints. Lots of companies pushed out laptops. Steve touched on that. You need to make sure when we're working from multiple locations, we can't guarantee, the kind of security people have at home or in, coffee shops, etc. So cybersecurity tools that sit on your endpoints to protect everything, and also other tools that look at your emails, look at threats from malicious links, from malicious attachments, and actually other things that help identify phishing attacks. Those are all kind of top level areas you really want to be looking at.
Yeah, I think, Simon, you raised some really good points there in terms of in Q2 alone this year, we've seen a rise of cyber threats and ransomware by 127%, which is just phenomenal. And that goes hand in hand with, obviously, COVID, this work from home or even work from anywhere, as you alluded to before, whether it be abroad, a coffee shop or anything like that, really. And I think that's one guarantee for SMBs out there, that security is not going away. It needs to be up there on the top agenda. It's a boardroom discussion, really, with Complete IT around, are we secure, are we safe enough, and constantly really reviewing that. Certainly the IoT, Internet of Things, one of the largest attacks last year on a casino, and when you think of a casino and an attack, you think of something like a film. However, they hacked the casino from sitting in the reception and connecting to the thermostat in the fish tank. It's these things which are actually connected to the devices. We've seen organizations that have had, believe it or not, and why you would want this, I don't know, but smart kettles which connect to your Wi-Fi, but that is a vulnerability within your network. It might be you picked it up from, Argos or Currys because it was on offer, but there is a backdoor. So certainly working with your IT and Complete to really make sure you've highlighted them and evaluated the business risks around that. So yeah, some really good points there.
But sorry, Greg, to interrupt there or interject. With that then, how far can you go with that? Because people have got smart devices all over their homes. So with the work from home element, I mean, it really does open up a huge can of worms to what could be accessible to, I've got smart light switches. I'm just thinking, how far does it go until somebody could actually say, you've locked your system down to be secure?
Yeah, it's for me, it's about balancing that risk, at least, rather than bury a head in sand approach. From today's call that ultimately them devices are a risk to your organization. So the likes of Complete IT, highlighting them and, having a business-led conversation around them as, are they secure enough? Are they on the right, security network? Are they locked down enough? It's making sure as we move forward as a digital generation, we are aware, security is, it's not going away anytime soon, and we need to appreciate that. But it is about balancing risk. How far do you lock systems down? But it's being aware, and I would say just keeping that communication and dialogue open with Complete and saying, on an ongoing basis to review the security, your practices. And as Simon alluded to earlier, there's not a silver bullet. This is an onion approach. You cut an onion, there's many layers from physical security, policies, procedures, business plans. Education is one of the most huge things for your staff within your organization. For any organization, whether that be Complete or Datto or Microsoft or anybody, the most risk to your organization is what sits between the back of the computer chair and the keyboard, i.e. me, the human element, you know, and that can be overcome with training, and that's not from malicious attacks, that can be from accidental mistakes. I think it was Simon or Tim mentioned phishing, where, you know, they're sending random emails in, usually at the, you know, the end of month or the times when they know you're busy, to try and catch people out. And it's being aware of it and making sure you have a 360 approach, and certainly work with Complete to evaluate that.
Yeah, I was just going to add on the cybersecurity front, the speed at which it evolves and develops is actually quite frightening. You know, there are new threats and risks being discovered all the time. And I think equally that there is such an array of solutions and technologies that can address those issues and those concerns. I think one of the challenges SMEs have is working out what's appropriate, because there are some solutions out there that are hugely expensive and no doubt very good, but that there will be a financial trade-off. I think there's also a perception that, why me? Why would I be the target of a cyber criminal? Why would they go after my company? And I think the short answer is, the reality is they don't care, they don't know. They're pretty unscrupulous, and it's sort of done en masse.
Yeah.
And it's also almost like casting a net out and seeing what they catch. So a small SME is as likely as a larger corporate to be the subject of a cybercrime event. So I think it's making sure that you're aware, it's making sure that you're cognizant of the fact that these things can happen, and usually it's done for financial gain. You know, I'm probably like most people here, I've got smart devices in my home. If somebody hacked my Ring doorbell, what's the financial gain they can get there? There's not a lot they can do with that. But if you're running a business, the likelihood is you've got an accounts platform, you've got invoices going out, there will be a financial target, a financial element to the crimes that they're trying to perpetrate. So it's just really, really important to make sure that what you are doing is appropriate for the nature of your business. And, you know, equally the Cyber Essentials standard from the UK government that is backed, that is a fantastic accreditation for every SME to be looking at and considering going forward.
Absolutely.
I think just building on what everybody said, and maybe to summarize, it is about having the appropriate security in place. It's about also having an appropriate backup in place. And as we've all mentioned, the weak point though in all of this is us. It is the humans, and therefore it is about education. And we do, as part of our core services, provide at no extra cost a training platform for all of our clients, because we recognise the importance of education for our clients. But we know there's no golden bullet for this. There's no one solution. It's a blend of everything, and it's just relentlessly, you've just got to reinforce that in your businesses day to day, because the problem, as we've said, is not going away. It's changing, evolving, and hence you've just got to keep it in front of mind for everybody all of the time.
Thank you. I actually had a really good example the other day where my dad had been targeted by a phishing email, and he'd completely fallen for it because he has his own company and he works on his own, hadn't been educated around any of it, and there's just so many attacks out there at the moment. So if he hadn't known to come and ask me, he would have completely fallen for it and given over his details and all of that. So yeah, there's a lot more around. So moving on, one of the areas that I think everyone's familiar with now is Microsoft Teams or other platforms that they'll be using to communicate with. Simon, what are the features of Teams that have allowed us and other organisations to continue working as normal this year? And have there been any significant updates that have been making life a little bit easier, or anything that's coming up?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, well, thanks, Jess. Well, so Teams we've talked about quite a lot, but no, we're big on Microsoft, and we help a lot of our clients use the Microsoft Cloud infrastructure. So Teams is a big thing for us, and have been for a lot of our clients, and we've discussed it today also. But Teams, yeah, and its core technology of providing kind of video conferencing and messaging has been an absolute godsend to allow everybody, you know, if you just talk about IT, to communicate in a similar way that they have done before, you know, face to face or in group meetings. being able to have that interaction with people. Because, you know, without any of this, it would be on the phone. It wouldn't be anything like it was when we were in the office environment. And of course, a big thing in Teams, as it's Microsoft, as it links in with all of their other services, is the collaboration piece. You know, being able to work on documents, on spreadsheets, with third-party tools in the one platform at the same time as colleagues, and have a conversation, video conversation or audio conversation whilst working on a document together, or whatever it might be. And also, you know, being able to, you know, as Steve mentioned about his recruitment, you know, being able to speak with, you know, clients or prospects or third parties through the platform as well. So it's been kind of invaluable for us and a lot of our clients. And because it's, you know, so widely used, and Microsoft make it available across many platforms. So, you know, the same look and feel on your phone as you do on your desktop PC here. So, you know, it's really accessible, and it's been a very well used platform over time. And I think it's kind of increased its use so much that Outlook's now kind of in second place. So email's becoming less important as we use Teams more and more. I think lots of people now would probably choose, you know, to lose Outlook over losing Teams because of the amount of work doing it day by day. And in terms of what's coming up, yeah, Microsoft, it's a huge platform, and they're constantly developing it. In fact, so many people using it at the start of lockdown. I think there's something like 16 million new tenants in the first couple of weeks, and Microsoft actually had to reduce the amount of features that were within Teams temporarily in order to accommodate all these additional users of it. So you might have noticed at the time there's some lesser quality video, but of course that's all gone away now. But they recently had their Ignite conference, obviously remotely this year, back in September, and there's a number of new features coming our way. Some smaller, some bigger. Things like together mode. You know, they're trying to not just look at the functionality, but look at how people are comfortable with interacting with each other, and they're changing ways that you might see each other. So, for example, together mode now will put all of you into an auditorium, and using AI will resize you so it looks like trying to make it more comfortable for certain people. I mean, I'm fine with kind of a setup with, you know, lots of screens of people, but some people find it more comfortable and it's maybe like in a desk environment. So they're working out ways to make the visual experience more comfortable for people. And then we're going to get onto things like custom layouts. So at the moment, if we within Teams, you know, projecting a PowerPoint presentation, for example, we might be able to in the future, or we'll be able to in the future, project our face or impose our face over the top of that, so you can talk and move around the PowerPoint presentation. So they're, you know, making it a lot more dynamic in the way that we can present our content. And a big piece that's coming, which has been kind of the number one feature request, is breakout rooms. Very useful for large meetings and in the education sector. So, for example, if you've got a large meeting with, you know, quite a few people within it, you can then create separate rooms within that meeting, and a meeting organizer can assign people to those rooms. So in a large kind of, say, board meeting, you might have some brainstorming sessions with more, you know, just between 2 or 3 people, and you can move people into those rooms. The organizer can jump between those rooms. You can send announcements. You can give people time limits, etc. That's been quite a big feature that's coming up this month or next month to the platform. I think will be quite a nice, useful experience. I mean, you know, at Complete IT, we've done that. We've been in big meetings, and then we've gone off on our separate ways to join our own little meetings to do some breakout sessions. But this will just make it a lot more seamless for people. Now, I kind of touched on earlier about it being a tool that we'd use, you know, as our kind of primary tool throughout the day. And Microsoft are investing a lot in bringing third-party applications into Teams. There's a lot already, but they're investing a lot more to bring a lot of third-party SaaS apps in, so that you can have Teams as your kind of platform throughout the day, no matter what you're using. And I think over time, we'll use Teams for things like editing documents and editing Excel sheets and PowerPoint presentations. We can do that now. It might not be as good as it could be, but over time that will develop. So, you know, I think they're hoping that everything will revolve around Teams throughout going forward. And then once we're hopefully all back in the offices, there's a lot of investment gone into making things like Teams rooms a lot more usable. There's some now advanced communications plans. They've now partnered with a lot of third-party hardware vendors to bring packages of cameras, speakers, microphones to make the rooms experience really work for people. And these licenses will then provide analytics on how the rooms are being used, allow you to apply security, look at what's been going on within the meetings, and also then have things like panels, so you can look at the scheduling and occupancy of rooms. So all built in, and just trying to make the whole Teams experience seamless throughout. And there's a lot going on, and if the audience, a lot of you use Teams and have ideas that you want, there is a website, microsoftteams.uservoice.com, that Microsoft do monitor, and a lot of input goes into that, and it's worth noting anything down in there that you think the platform should have. So yeah, it's certainly a platform that is not going anywhere and is only going to continue to grow throughout the years.
Thank you. And so moving on quickly, Amy and Steve, what advice would you give to the recruitment and third-party sectors when it comes to planning now for a future that might look quite the same as it did a year ago?
Thanks, Jess. I think from our point of view, I think everyone really needs to consider that your staff need to be able to work from home wherever they might be. And for us as a charity, that includes servicing our members and supporters who are vital to our continued success. So it's uninterrupted access to our CRM systems as well. So, you know, it's not just about being together, it's about your access to your server or your cloud-based systems, whatever you need. Working remotely doesn't just mean being able to type up a document or send an email anymore. But you need to be able to do what you would normally be able to do in the office. So Teams has meant we can do that, and it's enabled us to feel like we're still in a position to support everyone in the world when it's changing so much. So from my point of view, I'd probably say have a really strong plan of where you need to be and how you're going to get there, identify the gaps with your IT support team, and work together to make it a priority.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Technologies are at the forefront of what people need to be looking at, especially from the recruitment aspect, with automation is becoming quite big in what the different software systems that we can use to get general administrative tasks carried out, and equally marketing tasks. So we've got a lot there in that space. Obviously AI is quite big as well, and assists within our CRM as well. I'd say obviously for clients, just generally across the sort of SME market, I'd say obviously embracing the hybrid model. I think the work from home, work from office sort of model is going to stay. Addressing, we've mentioned it earlier, I think the biggest thing around businesses for their success is the culture, and making sure that we've got that fully addressed, and keeping that flowing in a way that you can, where, as you say, I think it was Colin mentioned you had people join over the whole lockdown period. You may have people join your business that haven't met everyone within the business. So trying to keep that culture there and integration is very fundamental, I think. And equally with that, what we are seeing is, it's sort of a question that's floating around at the moment, is the 9 to 5 day the sort of going to be the model, or is it going to be 2-3 hour hits where people fire into work for 2-3 hours solid, do something else for a couple of hours, and then fire back into the workload? So there's a bit more flexibility in the way people can structure their days. And my other bit I'd say is, for us, it's very key that we've got strong data, making sure that our data is up to sort of literally up to date, so we can utilize it properly, especially as we're sort of very much more in an electronic world, is key. And I think that's pretty key for a lot of businesses. So yeah, just remaining pretty tech savvy as well. So many platforms that we've got out there. I think if we're not checking, we check probably on average, I don't know, 4 or 5 different apps every couple of hours, just whether we're looking at, WhatsApp, or whether we're looking at text messages or emails or whatever. There's just so much going on. I think people are just naturally more tech savvy. They would be my sort of things to focus on from a business aspect.
I've really noticed as well, especially with the recruitment sector, across things like LinkedIn, competitors really supporting each other. Have you found that you've kind of engaged with people that may have been your competitors more in the past and seen people doing?
I think what's happened with the recruitment sector, it used to be a sort of going back a few years, it was a case of people just didn't talk to each other, and it was like, well, actually, the recruitment sector is that if you're not working in the same actual sector of recruitment, so if you're, I don't know, you're working in education, I'm working in IT, you're pretty much poles apart. So actually having a sort of a best practice and chatting to each other is actually really sort of a thing that's coming to the forefront and valued. But there was sort of in the past, there was this, well, you just can't talk to anyone else because they're in recruitment, or, you know, stay clear. But whereas now it's actually, it isn't. It's very much opening up the doors, having a chat with different people, business leaders within your industry to find out what best practice is and what's working and what's not working. I think because of that, the industry as a whole is getting better. And then it's down to just actually doing a good solid job at the end of the day.
I think it's Steve, there's some good points about collaboration with your peers, and I think the IT companies, or MSP as our channel calls us, we're pretty good at sharing ideas, because at the SMB level there are so many clients out there. You don't need to just worry about that, because there's thousands and thousands of prospects out there. So it's great to share and to see what other businesses are doing. And I think probably the new normal is that businesses who focus on SMBs are going to share information a lot more.
No, definitely.
It's going to enable everybody to grow.
And it's that old sort of adage, isn't it? You got to give a little bit to get a little bit, haven't you?
Yeah.
So, if you're constantly taking all the time, then nobody's going to share with you, because they're going to get fed up because you're not giving anything back to them. So I do believe that. Yeah, I think much better off putting your heads together. I meet up with a lot of different leaders of recruitment businesses just for a coffee and just to swing the lamp, see what's going on, so to speak.
Yep.
Great, thank you everyone. We'll move on to the Q&A now. We've got a few questions in already, but if you've got any questions for any of the panelists today, please send them over. Make a note of who they're for, if they're for anyone specific. Either use the Q&A or the chat, both is fine. So first of all, what technologies could be embraced to help the most reluctant of senior teams to trust their staff are utilising the time working from home? That's a good one. Simon, do you have any ideas?
Well, you could do random Teams calls to them and see if they answer. That would be one way.
Yeah.
You've got if you don't trust your staff. I mean, it's difficult. Yeah, I mean, Teams is an obvious one, because you can see where people are online, what they're doing. It's difficult if there's a lack of trust. Then it's the other issues are there to address. I think.
I mean, we as an organisation, value the output as much as the input. So it's a blend of making sure people are productive, but you truly don't know how many hours a day people are obviously working from home, because you're not with them all the time. But there's an element of trust, and it should be part of the culture, of course. If you've got a strong culture and everybody believes in the common purpose that the business is striving towards, then it should be okay.
If we look at the Microsoft Cloud again, because we concentrate on that, there are tools and features within there that allow you to look at time people have spent on various areas within the cloud piece itself, the Microsoft Cloud piece. It's obviously not going to give you a full picture of what they're doing all day, every day, but there are kind of tools that analyse what people have been doing. But it's a lot of trust going on there.
I was going to say I'd be more on the other side of it, to sort of say my concern is more that people are probably overworking because of the fear of people thinking they're not working. So they end up working long into the evening, or not taking any breaks throughout the day. So there's that aspect on the other side of home working, is people pitch down, and whereas they may have popped out for lunch or whatever, it just doesn't happen. So do people get refocused when they're at home, or do they just keep plugging on all the way through the day?
Yeah, I agree. That was something we focused on at the beginning, actually, with these complete coffee breaks, which we had scheduled throughout the day, where people could just pop in, and it was specifically around having a chat about things not to do with work for 10 minutes, time away from your screen, because you do need that. You do end up, I think, working through when you're at home, especially if you're on your own. Maybe not so much if you've got the kids at home as well.
Yeah, I just find that the trick is over communicate. I think with the shift to the remote working, what you don't have is that office environment where you can see the team and you can directly interact with people. And actually what I find myself doing is making more phone calls, making more Teams calls, checking in with people to make sure they're all right, that they're on top of their tasks. That said, you know, I personally understand the hesitation that some home workers perhaps aren't as productive. There are ways of addressing that. There are apps that enable you to track and record time. But I think that, you know, it's already been alluded to, there's probably bigger issues with individuals if that trust isn't there.
Okay, let's move on. Cyber Essentials is becoming the first target for many SMBs as they address their security. But is it good enough, or should most companies be aiming higher?
Well, the Cyber Essentials itself is obviously a government-backed scheme to ensure businesses take good security practices in 5 key areas within their business. So it is a good level, or does provide a good level of security for your business and your data and what your staff do. And of course, the scheme itself is constantly updated. So the set of criteria one year will be different the next, which is why you have to essentially do it from scratch each year. And being that there's 2 forms of it, the CE Basic and CE Plus, you know, the Plus is where you really should be, because then you're externally audited, you know, to verify that what you say you do, you actually do. And you know, that's just that extra level then that your clients, your prospects can be assured that you do take data security seriously. You can always strive above that. I mean, Greg talked about getting that fine balance earlier, but you know, this level that CE provides is at a good level that all businesses should look to gain. But of course, can build on top of it. Look at, you know, we've touched on endpoint security. Look at more user awareness training. Look at encryption of files, etc. Lots more. But yes, it's certainly the level you want to be getting to as a minimum.
Yeah, I think in my mind there's 3 levels. There's the Cyber Essentials Basic, you know, as Simon's already touched on. There's a Cyber Essentials Plus, and then I think if you're looking to build on that, there's the ISO standards. So the ISO 27001 is all about information security and data. It's actually something we're going through at the moment, and we had a stage 1 audit this week, which came back very positive. But it's an awful lot of work, and it keeps going back to what is appropriate for the nature of your business.
Okay, the next one kind of touches on the monitoring as well. Is anyone aware of any tools and apps that show when your colleagues are available when they're working from home?
Well, the
Teams has presence built in, doesn't it? So
yeah, Teams, there's the presence, and I guess if you're in the Microsoft Cloud, then you've got that ability, and obviously it translates over to Outlook as well, so you can see where people are available. And it's similar with other Google Cloud, they're all the same kind of.
I think there are other applications as well above and beyond that, and Simon mentioned it earlier around education. Obviously they monitor constantly all the time, you know, are they logged on, are they, you know, active, what are they up to? But it then becomes into that big brother space, you know, and it does come back to, you know, engagement with your staff and the culture that you've got. Sometimes it can actually upset teams and be worse for your organization, rather than that level of trust. And ultimately, I think somebody mentioned it on today's call, if you don't trust them, you know, to be on the systems or doing what they say, should you really be trusting them with your business? Would be my question. So it's a fine balance, I would say. But yeah, there certainly are applications that you can get.
Thank you. We've traditionally used paper forms with a real signature for our customer-facing processes. It's obviously difficult when working from home. Can you give any advice on going to an electronic signature system and archiving 50,000 plus existing forms that need to be kept?
okay, I can cover the first bit about electronic signature. So historically, all of our client agreements were hard copy ink signed. which is a pain. You've got to post them out or fax them in the old days, etc. But moving to Adobe EchoSign and doing it electronically online just makes life 100 times, 1,000 times easier and quicker and simpler. So for us, that's the solution. I'd recommend you have a look at it. I think there's a trial license you can get if you just Google Adobe EchoSign.
Yeah, there's others like that out there as well, you know, DocuSign and stuff. So there's lots of technology built for that specific requirement already.
Thank you. And what is the best way to protect against or recover from ransomware? It's quite a big question.
One for Greg, probably.
Yeah, again, it's coming back, having that you know, comprehensive approach to disaster recovery. Move away from thinking of the likes of back in the day, a backup device that just backs up your files, because, you know, if there was a disaster to strike, whether it be, you know, ransomware, fire or flood, if you had just your raw data, i.e. your files, would that be any good to you? Well, the answer would be no, because the machines would be infected and have ransomware, or they would have been damaged, whether it was fire or flood or stolen, so you don't have anything to put them back onto. Or maybe even if that was a hardware failure, you might have to wait for a device to be ordered and arrive. A true BCDR solution, business continuity and disaster recovery, is again touching on something that Simon mentioned earlier. It's around how much business data can you afford to lose if you go offline, and how long can your business afford to actually be off for. And obviously Complete IT can work these numbers for you and actually tell you what your business data is worth to your organization, which is a really good process to have done. And it's a mixture of some questions. They'll look at things like the size of your staff count, your average salary in your business, your average on cost, and be able to give you actually what your data is worth in a monetary value. Then when you come to look at protecting that data, you can actually usually get it down to a few pence per minute to protect your organization, which quite a lot of organizations are really surprised by the cost of it, really, because businesses are used to paying the likes of insurance, whether that be critical person insurance or public liability insurance. This is something that we're used to, yet we run the risk with our data. We don't do anything around our actual business data. So certainly engage with Complete. They can have a conversation around what your business data is worth, what makes sense in your line of work, whether that be, you know, today we've got recruitment and charity on, but it could be manufacturing, distribution, education, engineering. It's really taking a stance of what you can afford to risk and lose, but it can certainly be protected.
Yeah, I think in terms of the prevention angle, there's really two ways that ransomware occurs. The first one that we've touched upon a lot today is end user, you know, education of those end users to know what to look for and what to spot. There are some really good tools out there, online learning, exams at the end, just to bring up that level of awareness in your user base. The second is those really frustrating updates that all of your devices seem to want to do all the time. You know, whether they be Windows updates, iOS updates, they're there for a reason, even on your smart lights and on your Ring doorbell. It's because something has been found, most likely, in terms of a security flaw. There are other reasons they issue the updates, but it's always good to run those updates, keep your devices current, because that will help prevent against a lot of it.
Oh, got some music. The next one. What are the options for Microsoft Teams rooms and large interactive displays?
Well, yeah, there's lots of options. I mean, kind of touched on a little earlier that there's now some kind of Microsoft bundled items in terms of room sizes. So there's a Microsoft site that will actually allow you to enter a time of room size, and it will then provide a recommendation on the type of equipment that you should put in there, and the hardware from its hardware partners. You can, in terms of displays, you can pretty much use what you want. The Microsoft whiteboard feature within Teams can now be integrated with TVs that have whiteboard, not all, but some that have whiteboard features, so you can actually draw your finger or magic pen on the board. But there's lots of supported hardware out there, so there's lots to choose from. So you're not like heavily limited. Obviously, we can help you with that, and alongside Sharp as well.
Perfect. We have got to 2 o'clock, which has gone very quickly. So we have just quickly got a prize draw for the Microsoft Go 2, which Colin is going to very quickly read out the winner, who was selected at random.
We've selected randomly Tom Moody from Hancock and Parsons. Congratulations. You have won what have they won? That's Microsoft Go 2.
So Tom, if you want to get in touch with us at inquiries@complete-it.co.uk, we will send you. Congratulations. And just finally, if we just end on a final word from everyone, a piece of advice or something you've learned in the last year. So I think mine final thought would be that without being to collaborate and access data and documents remotely through Teams, it would have been a very, very different year for me and the team. We've actually just had Erin join our marketing team in Complete IT, and I've never met her face to face, but it feels like I know her already, and the induction process has been very smooth and simple. So yeah, that's all down to Teams.
I think for me, I just don't underestimate how isolated potentially our teams can feel working from home, and it's about communication, staying in touch, using technology, and maintaining that positivity out there, that this is a temporary thing. We'll be back together soon, and I personally look forward to seeing many of our clients in the flesh, not just over Teams in the future.
I'll just say, sorry Tim, we've talked a lot about the security and being aware, but don't be scared of the cloud. There are quite a number of businesses out there that really are afraid of the cloud, think it's unsafe, and I know we've touched on a lot of security matters today, but it really isn't, as long as you implement the most basic security features. It's a good platform allowing you to work effectively, remotely and securely for all the teams.
Over to you, Greg.
Mine would be don't just put technology in for the sake of technology. Work with Complete to actually make sure you are getting the business outcomes of that technology. Some of the biggest wins out there are not necessarily from hardware or software, it's about business process. So work with your trusted advisors, your Complete team there, to actually make sure you're getting the business outcomes and they are really driving you forward within your business.
Steve?
I would basically say use technology correctly to protect the well-being of your staff. It can be a lonely place out there, especially people that are sort of living on their own and still trying to do a solid job as well. So I think the technology allows us to do that.
Amy?
I'd like to echo just a little bit of what Greg mentioned earlier, and say don't wait until something business changing happens to find out what the limitations of your IT setup are. So review your IT business continuity plan, test it, take good sound advice to fill any gaps you've got.
And Tim?
Yeah, I think for me, probably the biggest learning for me is you can't plan for everything. I think the situation every company finds themselves in it's clearly never happened before, and I think the way that certainly we and our clients have had to adapt and have had to change, and people as well, the people's flexibility and positivity just to get on with it and get it done, I think has been absolutely fantastic. And I think we all can't wait to see the back of this. So fingers crossed.
Thank you, and thanks everyone so much for taking part today, and everyone who has been on listening, and thanks for all your questions.
Thank you very much, everybody.
If you
Thank
do
you.
have any further
you.
questions,
Bye.
feel free to email info@complete-it.co.uk and we'll pass any questions on. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.